Also with me now, John Miller, our chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst. He's also a former NYPD deputy chief, and former federal prosecutor Jeffrey Toobin, and New York City defense and trial attorney Misty Marris. Good to have all of you here. So, John, as we look at this, there are still actually some questions, and Shimon touched on this in his piece, about whether the state or the federal trial could go first. The sense is state is first, but could anything derail that?
Well, it could change, but the federal prosecutor said on Friday that they, carefully couched, that they expect the state trial to proceed before the federal trial. So the state trial could take a year before it comes around to trial, and the federal trial could come sometime before that. I mean, some good time after that.
Right. So as we look at all of this, I was struck by just some of the moments in court today. So the defense attorney from Mangione, Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, she was really drilling down on what's now become this infamous perp rock, right, that we saw, including the involvement of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. She also said she believed it was actually unconstitutional. Take a listen.
Your Honor knows under Lauro v. Charles, the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit has held it to be clearly established that the staged perp walks to the media, unrelated to a legitimate law enforcement objective, is unconstitutional. And I submit there was zero law enforcement objective to do that sort of perp walk.
She said he was political fodder. She basically was saying this was performative. There was zero law enforcement objective to having what we saw on Friday. You spent years as a prosecutor. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
I mean, prosecutors and police have to get defendants from point A to point B. When there is a lot of police interest, public interest, there are going to be cameras following him. I don't blame Agnifilo for raising this. This is something defense attorneys often do and should do, and try to keep the publicity under control. What they are going to try to do is delay things, get this thing on a slower, timeline, so that they can study thousands of hours of video evidence, lots of forensic evidence, and also allow passions to cool around the case. It is a classic strategy. The prosecution always wants to go right away. Defense wants to delay. Here, given the magnitude of the evidence, prosecutor even said it in court, the defense is going to have very good reasons to delay this, as John said, for as much as a year, if not longer.
It is interesting, though, it was not just the perp walk, right, where she was calling out Eric Adams. There was also another moment that I want to play that I think has stood out to a lot of us.
Your Honor, the mayor should know more than anyone of the presumption of innocence that he too is afforded when he dealing with his own issues. And frankly, I submit that he was just trying to detract from those issues by making a spectacle of Mr. Mangione.
Missy, she's saying there that he is trying to distract from his own legal issues as a defense attorney. Smart strategy?
Well, and also a little thinly veiled statement about Eric Adams and his own problems, right? But certainly a defense attorney has an obligation to their client to preserve any defenses that they may want to raise along the course of the case. And right now what we see is laying the foundation for these constitutional challenges relating to whether or not Mangione can get a fair trial, whether his due process rights have been violated. And Jeff made great points about how transporting someone who's such a high-profile defendant from point A to point B is obviously going to garner significant media attention. That being said, there's a difference from a defense perspective, and this will be the argument, when you have the mayor of New York City at the helm with those cameras, and then making a statement after the fact that he in fact participated for the very purpose of making a statement to the public regarding these types of things happening in New York City as a deterrent. So that's where we're seeing this argument shaping right at the very beginning of the case.
We should remind people, just so people out there don't know, Eric Adams, the mayor, is currently under federal indictment.
Yes.
So he will be going to trial in the same courthouse as Mangione at some point. However, he's still the mayor.
Yeah.
And this is a major news event in New York City. He should be allowed to comment on it.
So there's a comment like what we heard from Karen Agnifilo in court today. Does that backfire at some point?
This is going to go on for so long. I don't think anybody's going to remember a year from now what Eric Adams did or didn't say about Mangione. This is what goes on in these high-profile cases. But time takes care of a lot of the wounds.
You mentioned, and we were talking about the sheer volume of evidence there is, John, when there are bits and pieces that we know, obviously, but what is your sense of just how extensive that is and how much that will add to the timeline here?
Excuse me. It's going to add a lot. It's hundreds of interviews. It's hundreds of exhibits. It's the DNA evidence. It's the ballistic evidence. It's the microscopic tests. It's all the tips that came into the tip line. It's all the other suspects that they looked at as potentially prime suspects before Mangione was arrested. And it is chiefly, and when you talk about, they said, get us a 2 terabyte hard drive to load this evidence onto, because it'll blow up the portal that they use on regular cases. It's principally thousands of hours of video, which have relevant snatches of a couple of minutes or seconds here or there, but they're entitled to get all of it.
As we look at all of that playing out, we're also talking about a very high-profile defendant here, right? In federal custody right now, in a prison that is not known for being necessarily a great place to stay while you're awaiting trial. How does the high-profile nature of this defendant figure into the way that he's going to be treated behind bars?
He's in the same federal jail as P. Diddy right now. There are other high-profile defendants in there. The question is, will he be segregated because he's in a very notoriety-driven case, or will he be in general population? And the other major question is, will he stay there? I mean, they had to borrow him from the feds today to the purpose of this hearing, and they had to give him back. At some point, these judges are going to have to get together, and these prosecutors are going to have to get together and say, while he is being held for a state trial, is he going to be transferred to state custody, at which point he ends up in Rikers Island, which is a equally, if not more so, unpleasant place.
Yeah.
There is often a lot of competition between state and federal prosecutors for high-profile cases. Everybody's being very nice now, but you can be sure there is some serious negotiating going on behind the scenes. And frankly, the feds usually win because they have more resources. Here, they're suggesting that the state will go first.
Right.
Stay tuned.
There's a lot of work to do. Probably no surprise that that the plea rather today was not guilty, Misty. But really quickly, there are questions about what the defense will be. There's also been a lot of talk today about the fact that the defendant and his attorney were essentially in matching outfits. As a defense attorney, it was hard to miss. Is there anything to read into that? Or are we all just desperate for something to talk about?
So it was hard to miss. I agree. I don't think they plan to wear matching outfits necessarily, but it's been amazing the way with Mangione, every single issue regarding his appearance has really been at the forefront of the conversation. But yeah, we don't know how the defense is going to play out. It's largely going to depend on what's admissible in that courtroom. And I think Jeff made a great point about the feds and the state push-pull on the back end. I'm wondering what happens on Jan 20 when we're talking about the Department of Justice and a new attorney general and maybe not so nice between Alvin Bragg's office and that particular office. So we could see some changes along the way about how that tension plays out.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Misty. John, thank you very much. Mr. Toobin, stick around.